Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Vern Moses. Vern, it's so wonderful to be here with you again this week, and I wanted just to read, if I could, a letter from one of our viewers, and he says that I found myself swept away by the program material. This is a fast becoming my favorite TV show. And he went on to mention that he appreciated the fact that we didn't have a lot of distracting material going on in the background. And I know that you'd purposely selected a rather austere backdrop for this show. Maybe you could tell us why you've done that.
Yeah, it's nice to have that acknowledged because the producer, Nick Shelley's idea was, and certainly I was in agreement, that we have nothing to distract. I've been watching a lot of talk shows lately, frankly, in order to prepare myself manner-wise and what have you. And sometimes, I mean, you find yourself looking over at the window of the flower pot, you wonder what's on those books. You know what I mean? And what it is, I'm conscious of the fact that what it is the subconscious desire to escape what's being discussed if you're not in accord.
That's interesting.
You know what I'm saying? And what we intended to do here is to convey information without distraction. And so the dark background, the lack of set and glasses and flowers and what have you is all on purpose. And so I'm glad that we had someone who appreciated it, because there's been some people who have been concerned about it for us. And I try to reassure them, as we are now, the other listening audience, the fact that this is on purpose. And yet at the same time, we appreciate your comments. And if you really feel that we should have flowers and pillars and, you know, scenics in the back, well, we'll consider that.
Maybe they're concerned because they want to escape the material, and you're forcing them to focus on what we're really discussing here.
I think that might have something to do with it. That's great.
Last week we talked a little bit about the fact that sometimes we just like the world to go away. And there was an old TV commercial, it was for Bubble Bath or something, the woman said, "Take me away for an hour, just take me away." And sometimes we feel that way. And we were in the middle of a discussion, and I felt like we had a few loose ends to tie up, and if we could go back to that. I was fascinated by what you were saying.
I know we were talking about how sometimes we try so hard and accomplish nothing, and other times people hardly see anything at all, and they get it all, and it's kind of confusing at times. And what I eventually get to in almost every case is that most people have not learned how to effectively utilize their genie. In other words,
their what?
The genie. In other words, we all have a genie gift. Now that's G-E-N-I-E. Remember the, you know, I love Genie and whatever. We all have a genie. As a matter of fact, let me do it this way. Let's imagine.
Vern, you are full of surprises.
Yeah, we all have a genie lamp. Okay. And I found this years ago, and I thought it depicted pretty well what we were up to. And we know that if there's a genie lamp, that the intention of the genie is to do our bidding. In order to call the genie forth, however, whether it be a male or female, or a giant or a midget, it doesn't matter, that in order to call that genie forth, we're supposed to do something with the lamp. Okay? Now, you've seen the TV shows and the movies and read the books, so if you would, take a moment and call the genie forth so that it will do your bidding. I mean, you got to get it out of the jar.
Well, the traditional story is that we rub the lamp, right?
Okay, rub the lamp. Good.
Right.
It's rather interesting. I've done this with literally thousands of people across the country. And we pass the genie bottle around, and some people confidently will stroke it, and other people will rub it, and some people want to do tricky little things. But there's a lot of embarrassment, tentativeness, hesitancy when they're under pressure, because they don't know what I want them to do. You know what I mean? What is he up to here? And so then I get the bottle back, and I say, okay, let's discuss this for a minute. I will say one thing. One time that I can recall, just one time out of literally thousands of occasions, did the individual, for the sake of the illustration, stroke the lamp properly. Just one time.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a proper way to stroke a lamp?
Yeah. Oh, no question in this case. I noticed that most of us do what comes naturally.
Yes.
Now, when we say, based on our history and what have you, and our memory, we're supposed to rub the lamp or stroke the lamp. If you rub the lamp, there's a tendency to rub it this way. And if there's a better camera angle, I can rub it this way. It's okay. Some people will stroke the lamp, and when they do, they always stroke it this way. It just seems to be a natural thing. And what we say is this. Suppose we told you that in order to activate the genie and to get it to do your bidding and to make your life easier and wealthier and happier, that what you had to do is to take a moment and be aware and stroke the lamp this way. Now, they had to go this way, okay? So for example, over here, to stroke the lamp this way. What would everybody start doing?
Stroking the lamp.
Stroking the lamp the right way.
Right.
Now, once again, let's presume that the proper way is to stroke the lamp this way.
Right.
But we've been stroking it this way.
Right.
Now, if you're the genie inside the bottle, what's happening? I mean, the genie's hunkered down, not getting good instruction. In other words, he might even get upset and he said, well, of course I'm not doing your bidding. You've been rubbing me the wrong way for years. You know the expression? Okay. Or on the other hand, which would be even worse, suppose we're rubbing the lamp. Okay? Now, can you see what's happening? When you rub the lamp this way, the genie goes, you know what I mean? He becomes alert, ready to function, but then you do it this way. And you rub it this way, and you rub it this way. If you were the genie inside the lamp, what would that be like? I mean, one way, then the other, ready to go, settle down, and pretty soon the genie is saying, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to come out of here and make you give me 3 wishes. And I really believe that's what's happening to the vast majority of people.
Really? You think we're sending mixed signals to ourselves?
No question about it. And we're agitating the genie and getting it upset. And after all, what's a genie supposed to do? It's supposed to do our bidding.
Right.
But if you don't rub it the right way, or if you confuse it, it's not going to give you the results that it was intended to do. And so what we say is, hey, let's start doing this properly. Now, let me set this over here for a second and expand on this a little bit. The genie. We're talking essentially about the subconscious mind.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Powerful, powerful instrument. And we're not going to be good at anything until the genie kind of takes over and assists us so that we can go on to a new conscious level, make another adjustment while the genie manages everything. For example, the genie is what drives our car for the most part. You know, we kind of do it unconsciously. It's the genie that ties the shoes and cooks the meal and gets us dressed. I mean, it's taken over. We don't do anything well, like I say, until it's been, instructed and has adapted to your instruction and goes on from there.
So the more things we can put on autopilot, or the more
the genie
we'll be able
handles
to
it.
accomplish.
Right. Well, typically, that's what should happen.
I see.
But if we're not purposely conscious, stroking the genie, it gets complacent and does the same old thing over and over and over. It's kind of like thought patterns. There's some evidence that we think 50,000 thoughts a day.
Really?
And if we're not careful, we're going to think the same thoughts we thought yesterday. And last week, and last month, and last decade in some cases.
So our habits?
Yeah. You can say habits, the status quo pro, I call it.
Yeah,
It's really good at maintaining the status quo. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not as good as things could be. Now, the genie, being the subconscious, frankly, has been given a lot of power by a lot of different ideologies and philosophies that there's no evidence that it really has. In other words, you've heard about how if you've got a problem, you throw it over to the subconscious, you go to sleep, and the next morning you have the answer. Well, it's a conscious collation of data that's occurred during the evening. It's not from the subconscious. I mean, the evidence is fairly clear with that. Now, is the genie, or is the subconscious in this case, a mastermind or a servant mind? Some people have said it's the master. And I would hope not. You know what I mean? Because essentially the subconscious is an indolent, ignorant entity that only knows what's happened so far and has created a sort of a status quo, a denominator of events and circumstances that it tries to maintain, thinking that that is a survival place. Okay? Now, it's doing its job, and we don't want it to stop. We just want it to stop it being so dominant all the time.
I see.
It's supposed to be a servant, a servo mechanism that prepares us to do what we tell it to do. Now, let's talk about servant for a minute. Let's imagine that we've just come into the chips, and we have been able to build this big, beautiful home. I don't know, 6,000, 7,000 square feet, beautifully appointed, furnished, murals on the wall, grounds, a pool, a tennis court. I mean, it's beautiful. And we move in over the weekend, and gee, it's just incredible. It doesn't take us long, though, to realize that we've got a problem. If we go back to work, the source of the house is going to go down.
Yes.
It's going to take a lot of care. If we stay at home and take care of the house, the source is going to go bad. And so we need some assistance. And so we're going to go out and hire a servant,
Okay.
a house servant.
Okay.
And we want to get real careful about this because we don't want any turnover. And we want this a long-term, lifetime relationship. And so we interview very carefully, we test, we check references, and finally this delightful person enters our life and we make a contract. And it's non-cancelable. And we all know this is the way it's going to be.
Okay.
This is it. Everybody's excited. So this person moves in over the weekend, and by Monday, too late, we've realized we made a mistake.
Uh-oh.
This is a dominant servant. Didn't reveal it before, but all of a sudden that dominance begins to come out. For example, this servant who's come into your home says, Gina, I want you up and out of bed every morning by 5:30. I make beds at 6 o'clock. I don't want body temperature in them. Oh, and George, I want you to stay out of the pool after 10. No pool parties. I mean, we're not going to have this. Oh, and Harry, I don't want you coming home for dinner at 5:30. You know what I mean? I serve at 5, don't come late. And stay out of the refrigerator. That's my domain. I'm all set up for the next meal, breakfast, for example. So eat out. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, what is this?
Servant from hell.
Yeah, this is not the arrangement we had planned on. And it's not going to change unless we, in turn, consciously become more dominant. Because we have to say, hold it, hold it, hold it. You have to understand what the relationship is here. You're here to serve us. You're here to assist us. You're here to make our life easier and more effective. And so, of course, we're going to sleep in. And you're going to have to make whatever adjustments you have to make, adapt in any way that you have to in order to do those beds when they're available to do. Do you understand? I mean, you got to get militantly adamant with the dominant servant. Now, it can't quit.
Okay.
Yeah, it can't leave. And so if you're dominant, consistent, and persistent, my contention is that sooner or later the dominant servant is going to become a reluctant servant. In other words, they'll do it. Yeah, they don't want to do it, but they'll do it. But have you made any progress? I think so. I'd rather have a reluctant servant than a dominant one in my life any day. Now, I take a new task. I go to a new dimension. Say, for example, we might have handled this bed problem.
Okay.
Okay. And now we're going to go to the pool problem. Of course, we're going to have midnight pool parties. That's why we bought the home to, enjoy. Oh, and by the way, don't forget about the beds. And those you've got to go back and review, make sure that there's no regression here, and then take on a new project. Now, if we continue in this, the reluctant servant gradually becomes a cooperative one. In other words, there's no fuss. They just do the job. You know what I'm saying? Have we made any progress? Dramatic. We have a cooperative servant on our hands.
Right.
And we go back and hit on some of these other issues, and gradually, ever so gradually, it gets better and better and better. After a while, the evidence is clear that we might create a contributive servant. Contributive. Isn't that a nice feeling?
Really?
That on their own initiative, because of other experiences and how they've collated this information, they begin to contribute to the environment. Now we're cooking. I suppose in some generational way, it takes a long time, that we could in some strange way, or at least perceive to have a creative servant. Someone who would come up with and initiate new ideas, new concepts, and what have you. This is questionable, but it appears that way.
And you're talking, all this would be coming from the subconscious mind.
Right. Yeah, this is all, and what we've done is to consciously, dictate to our subconscious the way we want things to be. Now, in the servant, now what I'm talking about here, let's take for example, I can remember years and years ago, my first ride on a bicycle. I mean, I was too old to not be riding a bicycle, but my mother, my father, my grandparents, and some neighbors supporting them told me I was not to ride a bicycle. That when they wanted me to ride a bike, they would buy me a bike. And until then, stay off them because you're going to get hurt, you're going to tear your clothes, and we're not going to pay any doctor bills, yada, yada, yada. Well, I honored that. That was my source of food and love and nurture and what have you. And so I honored that for a long time. But really, I began to look around my world, and there was a conflict. Other kids my age and younger were riding bikes and having a good time. And so after a while, I just broke loose. And I made a commitment that I was going to ride a bike. Okay? And so I borrowed this kid's bike. He was reluctant, but he let me take it. And I got beside this big rock, and I kind of straddled the bike and kind of balanced there, and it felt pretty good. And I pushed off, and I got my feet on the pedal, and whoop, whoop, you know what I mean? It was going pretty good. All of a sudden, I know now what happened. My servant mind, my subconscious said, "What are we doing? We don't ride bikes. You're going to fall and get hurt." You know, all the admonitions come rushing in on me. I froze at the handlebar. Okay, and I you know what I mean? I lost it, and I ran into a stone wall, careened off, hit a clothesline, darn near hung myself.
Oh my goodness.
Sure enough, there I was on the ground, tore a shirt, bloody. Everything was coming true. Follow?
Yes.
Now, I'd made a commitment. I got up, and probably one of the best sales jobs I've ever done in my life was to talk that kid into letting me try riding his bike again. He did, you know what I mean? So I got on the rock again, got the balance, shoved off, went a little further, did a little bit better, and very quickly, even that one day, because of commitment and being on purpose, my dominant servant became reluctant. You know what I mean? I was riding pretty well, and I was doing okay. It became cooperative that day. It was not too bad. A few days later, I was conscious of it becoming contributive in that when I got into a little bit of difficulty, I unconsciously managed to swerve and brake just at the right time to avoid being harmed. Follow what I'm saying? In other words, it was doing its job to protect me, being a survival mechanism. Now, it misunderstood in the beginning. Hadn't done it before. You see, the subconscious can't see, hear, feel, smell, or taste. It just knows it's doing something different, we're in jeopardy, and it shuts you down.
So it has to be trained and guided.
Exactly. Now, the good news is that the subconscious mind, which is an adaptive entity, will adapt quickly to any adjustments that we make. Now, any conscious, cognitive, predetermined, intellectual changes that we affect because we want things to be better will be quickly adapted to by the subconscious if we prevail over its messages. Those are the rats and roaches that it sends out to stop us from doing new stuff. You know that feeling?
Yes.
Yeah. And what we have to do is to learn how to stroke our genie, the subconscious mind, in such a way that this process occurs in our favor. Now, the way we do this, okay?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You mentioned that it's a very adaptive entity, and it occurred to me that perhaps at times we also adapt probably by regressing as opposed to progressing. Or
I think
do
most
you find that
adaptations,
happens?
Yeah, most adaptations are clinging to what already has occurred and very easy to go backwards.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we tend, an adaptation or adaptation is a surrendering and accommodating, a making do, a coping, you know what I mean? In other words, if we're not careful, we can keep adapting ourselves all the way down to a Dempsey dumpster dinner.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we can go all the way down. And so we have to maintain our intellect, and we have to make these little adjustments in order to maintain balance. And if we get real serious and learn how to do all of this, we can make major adjustments, tacking one on top of the other as soon as each one habituates. Okay, and now we got to go back and review once in a while, just like we had to do here. Remember, we had to go back and remind them about the bed.
Right.
And we had to, by the time we got to the dinner table, we had to go back and remind them about the pool. But we had to keep going.
Right.
And by the way, once an attitude has been determined, an experience enjoyed or suffered, an attitude or an idea internalized, it's always there. It's always there, part of our consideration process. This is why, for example, it's such a tragedy in a way when a young person, in order to be part of the gang, to conform, will take that first taste of a drug. Because the subconscious mind goes, aha, this is part of my experience now.
It's no longer foreign.
Yeah, and it wants to do it again.
Really?
Oh yeah, knows the drugs, you know, I mean, any drug, I mean, certainly cigarettes did it with caffeine, but any drug, no, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. No, it is an experience the subconscious mind adapts to it and wants to do it again, and may always want to do it at some level, because it may never go away, although it can become manageable if we really exercise our conscious mind effectively.
So I'm hearing two very important things from you here, Bern. It sounds to me like that with our children, it's important that at a very early age we help them to determine what it means to be on purpose in their lives, so they are able to start habituating in the proper direction, and also so that they don't, so that we studiously avoid experiences that perhaps will lead us in the wrong direction, away from our purpose.
And I tell you, the surest way to do that is to acquaint a young mind with itself. You understand what I'm saying?
No, what do you mean by that?
To take, no, here's the thing. What we see here, okay, you and I, protoplasm, stuff, okay, designed to get the mind around, to propagate all the things that we've talked about in the past. I can remember my grandson David, for example, when he was probably about 3, 4 years old. There were quiet times when I would sit in front of him and I'd look into his eyes as deeply as I could, and I'd try to connect. And I'd say, David, I want to talk to your mind for a minute. It's incredible. It's incredible. Limitless in its possibilities. And as I looked at him, he would kind of, like he would internalize.
He'd be looking with you inside?
Like he was understanding that I was introducing the mind to itself, making it aware of its trichotomy, trying to harmonize it in some way. It was just an exciting experience. It was like sometimes a little light went on in him.
Really?
And I'll tell you, today, David is beginning to move in a direction. It's going to be pretty exciting to see. I understand the other day at the dinner table, he's playing baseball now. He's 8, and he plays with the 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. He's pretty talented from what I gather. Of course, that's a grandfather talking too, but yeah, reality.
There you go.
But the thing was, he was eating dinner, and as matter-of-factly as you could imagine, he said, you know, whenever I come up to bat, the crowd just comes alive.
Wow.
And he wasn't bragging. It was kind of like, this was just a matter of fact. He was conscious of it. Well, his grandmother said, can you believe this? You know, and his dad said, it does. I mean, he had a grand slam the other day, and they just expected again of him. You know what I mean? In other words, and a lot of that is because, I mean, hours of communicating in every way that I could when he was real young to the mind itself, introducing it to itself. And follow what I'm saying? In other words, if young people can get introduced to the trichotomy, understand that they have a conscious mind and a subconscious and a conscience, and talk about these things, they can prepare themselves to avoid, to adopt, I mean, in a whole different way throughout their life. It's never too late. It's never too late, but yet it can be more difficult than it need be if it gets off track and has to be pulled back. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
So if we can start right, we can finish right. It's kind of like buttoning a sweater. You know, if you start wrong, no matter what, you know what I mean, you're going to end wrong. But it's not necessarily true with the mind, because it can be adjusted, and the subconscious can be assuaged and softened and reconditioned, even though it's going to cling to, in some small way, to that status quo.
Well, how do you feel about, a lot of times we'll have experiences, say with drugs or something like that, and people will say, well, it was a very valuable learning experience for me. I needed to go through that. How do you come back with an answer for that? I'm
sorry for them in that area. Yeah, I understand what they're saying, but they're getting in concert with all the people who have been there and discarded it, and now they're heroes, and I'd rather talk to the person who never got tempted. You know what I mean?
Who was strong initially, who was able to be on purpose all along.
All along.
Make the right decisions.
That's right. This thing is going much faster than I had even presupposed. We're getting close to the end of the evening, or the morning, or the day. I do want to say this, that in order to do this in real life, the way we stroke the genie is verbally. There's the use of words and visually. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of keep these notes, and we're going to kind of get back to them possibly next week.
Wonderful.
And I'm going to kind of keep this. In the meantime, we've been getting a lot of calls. And I want to encourage people to call 1-800, I guess we can do this down here, 1-800-661-3490. And what we'll do is to send out a cassette tape of the program. The front of the tape will be the introductory show that we did nearly 4 months ago. I'm finding that people want to hear that as to what we're up to, what the background is, what the philosophy is, this type of thing. So on one side of the tape will be that first show, the pilot, if you would, and on the second side will be this particular essay or discussion. Also, if they care to write, we'd like to read the letter on the show like we did with this gentleman, and in all probability we'll send them a videotape, because we really appreciate the mail. It gives us a sense, a flavor of what's happening out there, and I want to please as many people as possible, because that's what the intention is, to make a difference,
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything at all that you would like to tell your friends, or that you need to remind me to do? Or?
Well, again, I think it's wonderful to get comments from our viewers, and we do get quite a bit of mail and a number of phone calls, and we'd encourage you to please call if you can, and let us know what you think of the show.
I'll tell you something, too. I don't think it's inappropriate to say that a lot of the people who've called in conversation have been so delightful that I have sent them free tickets to a live concert that we do, and strictly our guest, no obligations at all, so that they can come and get a flavor of the real life experience, and we can get acquainted. And frankly, I know that some of them are watching at this very moment, and I appreciate them. And so, if there's not anything else, I would say we should think in terms of going out and making it a good day for somebody.
Absolutely.
This idea of having a nice day just doesn't happen. Let's take the responsibility and go out and make it a nice day for somebody, and that way 2 people would have had a nice day. 2 lives would have been enhanced, enriched, and enlivened. 2 lives would have been benefited. Understand what I'm saying?
At least.
It's a great practice process. It's a great practice process. Gina, I guess everyone should be reminded that my name is Byrne, and the last name is
Moses.
Moses. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Byrne.